Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I need it.
I don't think he felt anything after the crowd.
Hello and welcome back. We are Breaking Up with RBS. This is episode number 51. We keep creeping up, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin. And yeah, we do keep creeping up.
I know.
Better than creeping out.
Probably.
Here to debunk the junk. I really don't rehearse what's going to come out of my mouth with all this kind of thing. Trying to stay as present as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, good to see you. And
See you too.
yeah, and thanks to all of you for listening. If you're listening live, thank you so much for doing so. Thank you for subscribing to it as a podcast, leaving a review. We appreciate that. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, here we are. And we're not both wearing black because we're in mourning or anything like that. It's
just accidental, coincidental,
kind of how
whatever.
it worked out.
Yeah.
So Tawny, how's the week been? What do you want to talk about today? We talked last week about getting into the body and the importance of that and coming from a space. How did you put it? From a whole space.
A whole space.
Yeah.
Yeah. True resiliency is from the whole space.
From a whole space, not from just the mind space, from the whole body space. And so
absolutely.
that was I always enjoy those conversations when they come up or when we have them, because it's always just a good reminder of what's become more and more fundamental to me, that the more often I can remember to go back and stay in that space, the better off I am. So what do you feel like going? Where do you feel like going this week?
You know, one listener keeps asking me to talk more about being in line with values and how that is, how and why that is important for us.
Connects right back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Did this listener have any specific things about values other than just wanting to know more about it?
Yeah, I just really wanted us to expand a little bit. We had done a couple of shows way back when, maybe 6 months ago or so, where we were sort of talking about, I know, we're so old. Where we were talking about values and being able to understand and be in line with our values, especially in times of stress, but certainly always. And she really wanted to hear more about that.
Okay.
So,
okay. Well, what comes up for me as a starting point, maybe as a starting point, is relatively recently somebody asked me. So I was catching up with somebody I hadn't talked to in a while. And they were asking how are things, and I just kind of said, I'm not doing anything that I don't really enjoy. I'm busy. I have a lot going on and I have stresses, but they're all from things that I really enjoy. And the people that are in my life are people I enjoy. I don't have anybody that I'm just tolerating, right? Or just dealing with. And I realized not too long after that, and when I asked myself why, again, from that whole space, it's because all the things that I'm doing and approaching and the reason why I'm doing them are all aligned with the most important values that I have. And I know what those are. And so, and I guess why I've been able to sustain that over a while is because when you know what your values are, you kind of know when things come at you, whether that's something you want to pick up or not, or is it time to maybe jettison something that is no longer working, because those can change, right? And I do feel like I've got a little bit more of a toolkit, or I got a little more of, some good muscle memory on these things now. And I guess that's sort of what we're, what we're talking about, right?
Right. As you were talking, I remembered talking to someone else a few weeks ago and, sort of, just feeling sort of discombobulated, not myself, but this other person I was talking to, feeling discombobulated, sort of like, kind of crunchy and not really feeling like she was enjoying more the day to day. And through conversation, we realized, well, she really wasn't utilizing creativity. She had kind of gone on automatic pilot. And creativity is really important for all of us. But certainly she was identifying that's really important for her in her life. And so she would do things that would sort of maybe be somewhat creative, like keep a clean kitchen and reorganize the kitchen, or, things like that.
Yeah.
So she was trying to sprinkle those into her day unknowingly. But she really wasn't realizing that maybe we could expand that out a little bit. Maybe we could get a little more creative about being more creative, and without it having to be something that she has to produce.
Oh, sure.
Right, because I think
Sure.
oftentimes, if we're gonna talk about creativity, and that is something we value, and we wanna be more in line with that, we oftentimes think we need to produce something
Mhm.
that is going to be appealing to somebody else maybe in
Mhm.
some way or another, and we don't need that. I think that's another stumbling block to the whole process
Right.
if we have to have that as part of the arrangement.
Mhm.
So as she opened up and allowed herself to be a little more creative about how she could be more creative in her life, it was sort of like an aha. She felt it in her body,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's the thing about values is when we are connected to them we feel it in our body. That's a great like signal
Mhm.
about that one in particular being important to us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So in that case, the value that she has is creativity. This is an important value. It's up high in her list. And because she wasn't really engaging with that in ways that were helping her connect with that, she's feeling lack.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
Right. So then that raises the big question is how do we know like what values are we talking about, right? And we've done episodes on this before, and it's how would you describe when we're talking about values in this context? Because it's not necessarily what we think of when we hear and all this stuff in social media about what our values are. A little different, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where the way we start to dissect the words, right? We're certainly not talking about morals or, things like that. We're talking about sort of like, ways in which we can express ourselves
Hmm.
and engage in life, from a place that matters to us. So I think we've talked about courage and bravery before,
Yeah.
certainly compassion and love and kindness,
Kindness. Yeah.
even self-regulation can
Hmm.
be a value.
Hmm.
Being organized could be a value
Yeah.
if that was something that was important. Being able to, you know, have some spirituality in our lives could be
Hmm.
a value. Um, all sorts of things that that tell us something about ourselves that we want to put into action
Hmm.
could
Hmm.
be a value.
Right. Right. And it's usually things that aren't dependent on somebody else letting us know whether we're doing that or not. Right. So like
Um,
for example, I strive hard to be reliable.
mhm,
That's something that's important to me. Sometimes I cannot be. I'll say I'm going to do this by this point and I don't always, right? And I've been working hard to be more reliable. But would that be something as a value? Would reliable be a value if really I'm defining it by how well am I showing up to do this for this person or anything like that? Or is it more for me that makes it a value if I feel like reliability? I don't know if that's a good example,
well,
but that's one that comes up.
I think certainly reliability could be important to you,
Mhm.
and so you're deciding to hold yourself accountable to put that in action.
I see.
If you're doing that because of an external motivation, like, and I don't know, this is like pleasing another person,
Oh, okay. Sure.
then it might get a little goofy.
Because then somebody else is okay. It's
Because
not,
then
by the
what
way.
if right,
It's not,
right.
by the way.
But if, right? I know a lot of times we get confused by this, like, well, this is the appropriate way of being, and this pleases another person, so I
Mhm.
need to be this way, right? And then what if it doesn't please another person? What happens to
Right.
us when it doesn't please another person? And that's good information for us. So
Sure.
if reliability is just important to you, you show up, you continue to do it. I don't care if somebody's happy with me or not, or if it meets somebody else's need or not. That's just important for me to do.
Yeah.
Then that's probably one of those values that
Mhm.
you probably want to keep at.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
keep at that fits in with other ones, other values as well, and the big ones for me, creativity is a big one for me as well. Kindness,
Mhm.
compassion, and I think with compassion comes a dropping of judgment,
Sure.
that's I sort of see the 2 as the same. Uh, courage, I guess, is in there, calm. Trying to think of other ones. There's
Mhm.
so many, right? Um,
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different sort of assessments out there that one could do to kind of
sure.
look up terms and certain
Fun,
fun is, play
fun,
is,
play, yeah.
making things beautiful might be.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I love flowers and colors, and that
Mhm.
certainly could fall under creativity, but I'm finding myself putting more and more and more flowers on the deck. At some point there's might not be space for people to come visit, but we'll see. But so maybe I go a little overboard with that. But certainly, there can be wisdom. I think is one of the ones
Oh, yeah.
I like to engage in.
Yeah.
Reflecting and
Yeah, me too.
looking at things in particular ways
Mhm.
that allow for wisdom to grow,
Mhm.
things like that. But when we know our values when we feel them in the body, not just I'm supposed to be this way in my
Yes.
head.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was not too long ago, I was making dinner, for my family, and I was just kinda throwing stuff together, like, I knew where I wanted to go, but I had some ideas of what I wanted to do differently, and they were kinda chuckling about it, and, one of my family members says, "Wow, you really do like to cook," and that's true, I do, but I realized in that moment what I enjoy about it is the creativity in the process of making something, and I wonder how this is gonna taste, or I wonder how this is gonna go. There's something about that I thoroughly enjoy. If somebody wanted me to cook all afternoon to produce something, I would do it just to see what I could do. Now it might come out differently, or I might go, "Ooh, what if I threw this in there?" And it might not work. I've had a number of experiences where I cook something and I start laughing because I'm like, "Okay, note to self, do not put that into this in the future."
Mhm.
But the process,
Mhm.
to me, I really connect with that, and that's something that I'm not sure necessarily there's a result, you're creating a meal,
Yeah.
but at the same time, for me, the process of engaging in something that feels like I'm doing this for me and it's healthy because I make healthy food most of the time.
Mhm.
That part feels good. Whether or not the actual experimentation works or not is kind of secondary.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so in for that example, if you were only cooking if you had to rely on other people to cook for, like you said, like, I wouldn't cook for myself this way, I would only wait for other people to be
I
around to
see. I
cook,
see. Yeah, I cook for myself that way all the time.
right? Then you might be missing out on
Mhm.
something that would be really valuable for you to engage in regardless of
Mhm.
what's happening for other people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mhm.
And the other part of it that I enjoy is that when I'm cooking on my own for myself, I always turn on Motown,
Mhm.
and I love to move around and dance to that. There's just something about that. Feels good, right? And I used to think that was kinda weird. I didn't share that with people for the longest time because I thought people would think that was weird. Again, external, right? But I've learned to embrace it, and it's kinda nice, and it kinda fits with the other things that I wanna do, that I like to do, strangely enough.
Yeah.
So what gets in the way of this, do you think? Like you had a listener asking about it, and, we've had other listeners ask us about it. Other people ask us, so what gets in the way of us understanding what these are or naming them, pulling them together in a way that benefits us?
Well, we certainly haven't been conditioned to know these things about ourselves.
It's true.
We've been conditioned to know the things that are appropriate externally or the things that we're supposed to be doing
Mm,
at the different stages and phases of life,
expectations.
right? Yeah, expectations and again, being in our heads.
Right,
Again, we've been
right.
conditioned to do it this way.
Mhm,
4-year-olds go to school now, right?
mhm,
Pre-K
mhm.
to start the learning process.
And then they go to karate
Right. Oh, maybe
or
yeah,
something.
sometimes or not, right? But the play part
Mm,
of our
I see
lives
what you're
gets
saying.
taken away. The free play part of our lives gets taken away pretty early in
Yeah.
our lives.
Mm.
And we're not doing anything to change that.
Doesn't seem
It
like it.
doesn't look like right
Doesn't
now.
seem
I
like
mean,
it.
we could talk about a lot of structured play. Oh no, we've got karate. Okay, that's not free learning play,
Yeah, yeah,
right? That's where we're really good at this structured thing,
yeah.
right? You're supposed to go to karate now,
Mhm.
right? So part of us learning about ourselves is having that time.
To experience and figure that out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and to create and to explore and to run headlong into things we don't like.
And we just don't
It's
live our
true.
lives this way from a very early age. And unfortunately, technology and social media isn't helping this
It
in any
isn't.
way
It's
either.
it's suddenly as if, everything becomes competitive, right? It's amazing to me that, getting into daycare facilities is now a competitive enterprise, right? You have to apply for these things, or then you have to interview the places that you want to go, like, "Is my child gonna do this or do that?" And and parents thinking, asking questions about elementary school curriculum. Is this going to prepare them for university? You kidding me? Yeah, I mean, I was just talking with my sister the other day. We were laughing hysterically about remembering all the old playground equipment when we were kids. We played outside all the time. And like the metal slides that got red hot in the summer, and then the metal, merry-go-rounds that split kids' head open all the time. And just, but we were outside all the time. I mean, my parents just said, yeah, you guys were always out running around.
Yep.
Exactly that.
Us
And
too.
and for me, what's so exciting, I'm so appreciative of that. There's so many things I could say, but I know what it feels like to reconnect with that spirit because I did it once before. So kind of the Motown thing,
Mhm.
dance feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that all our lifestyle gets in the way of
It
that,
does.
right? So as we get more experiences in the body, as we start to maybe hopefully reprioritize what's all the goodness that's there,
Hmm.
right? We start working with it, like you said, sort of up the ladder.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. Then maybe we also that helps us sort of reconnect with what we
Mhm.
value because
Mhm.
we feel it in our body. Living from that headspace, we don't get any clues
Yeah.
from our body. So how do we even know what we value?
Mhm.
Except for what we're supposed to, because that makes us a good person. We're supposed to make sure people are happy with us. That makes us a good person. We're supposed to do all the right things. That makes us a good person. We're supposed right like and then we get critical and defensive and exhausted and we're not even doing all the right things anymore
Right.
anyways. Right?
Right.
And then we're beating ourselves up and everybody else for it too.
Exactly. And we're getting further and further away from the very thing we've been wanting in the first place and doing all that. Yeah, and and for me there's those times of where I feel off, if I get into my body. It's amazing how quickly I get a better sense of not only where I'm at, but then suddenly what I need to do next. What would be most helpful I'll do. And it might be something that I wouldn't have thought of from a mind space. Sometimes it's something as simple as getting up and going outside.
Mhm.
About 5 minutes, 10 minutes of fresh air will go a long way for me, or because it's summertime, sunlight, getting some sunlight.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes it's that. Other times it's just simply recognizing that, yep, I've been in my head.
Mhm.
Yep, I'm in a headspace. Let me just not stay there. Right. Let me sit in the body space for a while. And it's amazing what happens. The body is not even an ally, it's an integral part
Right.
of this when we engage with it. And it tells us all the time that it's available, by when we're, stressed and all those kinds of things
It's talking to us all the
all
time,
the time.
and we don't listen and we don't listen until something really major happens
Mhm.
with our physical body,
Yep.
because that is what will happen if we continue to ignore.
Mhm.
We will get hit over the head more often and with a harder, like, mallet or whatever
Mhm.
if we ignore the softer ones
It's true.
that come first.
It's true. Because at some point, the body just says enough is enough
Mhm.
and it gets your attention one way or the other.
Yeah.
And migraines, illness, fatigue,
Mhm.
right? Loss of appetite, huge increase in appetite.
Mhm.
It's and then we think we're something, but so often then when that happens, we go back to the mind space of, oh, okay, well, I need to push through this or make this change or whatever. And again, the cycle gets missed to get back into the body.
Mhm.
Sometimes the answer just is to get back in the body and experience what's there.
Or even for the first time, right? I
Yeah.
think that when and what we immediately do when that happens for the body in terms of, like, we're, really feeling it in the body, we say, "What's wrong with me?
Mhm.
I used to be able to do all of this. I used to how do I get back to where I used to?" Right?
Mhm.
Instead of saying, "Okay, body, talk to me.
Yeah.
What's going on here?"
Yeah.
Right? Like, really starting to connect. Okay. What what do we what does it feel what do you wanna do right now? Like,
Mhm.
you said go outside just to be outside for 10 minutes or go for a 10-minute walk. I don't know how many people tell me, "I don't have time for that." You don't have time to get outside for 10 minutes? I'm gonna call BS on that,
Absolutely.
and I
It
do.
is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sure you do.
Mhm.
Because what people miss in that, and I used to do that too, is the assumption that you already know how it is best to use your time and in what way from your mind space, without recognizing that by taking 10 minutes outside, you might actually, unkink the log jam, if you will. I realize I'm mixing my metaphors, but you know what I mean. And feel better, be more productive, whatever it is that's, you think is wrong, you can actually less is more if you take a little bit of time, for those types of things. Sometimes for me, it's, I've had awareness too. Is like, I've been feeling this way, this way, this way. Are you hungry? Yeah, I might be hungry, but then I also know sometimes, oh, you know what? I'm a little low in this area. I'm going to cook this.
Mhm.
My body can tell me that. My body can tell me what I'm lacking. That's the amazing thing,
Mhm.
right? If we just learn how to listen, and then I can act on it. And it's what's remarkable is when from that space, it's so easy to just stand up and do it.
Mhm.
I don't get in my own way very often.
Yeah. Well, nothing to be confused about if you're paying attention,
Right.
right? It's very confusing when we're not paying attention
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it's like trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together without the actual pieces, just like a fork and a spoon and I don't know, something else trying to put together. Well, they don't,
Mhm.
we're paying attention to the wrong things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is pretty simple when we're paying attention internally
Sure.
and connected to our body.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's so important. I don't remember how in this process, like, where all the values began to align. It just kind of, all came together again in that comment I made.
Mhm.
Is there do you recommend a starting point for anybody when you start talking about values? Do you recommend anything as far as a way to yes, are there questions you ask to get people thinking about what their values really are?
I think that there's a lot of ways people can have access to this. There's a lot you can even do some value assessments online, really
Mhm.
easy. And I've done it a lot of different ways. Back in the olden days, I actually had cards.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we would, we'd meet face to face back in the olden days, and
The
we
old
would, go through the card deck, right? And people would put it in like an important category, a somewhat important, and a like not important,
Yeah,
right? So
that's
we'd
how I
start
did
to
that. Yeah.
flush things through. And then we'd identify maybe the top 5 or 10 out of this most important. And we would say, okay, so keep these values in mind this week as you go through your life. And when you're struggling to make a decision or when you feel like you've got to do the go back to these values. Be in line with your forget the rest. Be in line with these values for right now.
Mhm.
See what happens.
Mhm.
It is so much simpler, right? Because we're aware of our sort of map that we've created for ourselves. Nobody else has put this together for us. I don't put it together.
Yeah, right.
Right? And so go out and engage and explore the world from this state, right? And it's different. It's very different when we do this.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how we would work with that. But there's a lot of other things. You could even Google like values, come up with a list, do the whole thing
Mhm.
yourself, right?
Mhm.
And especially in times of stress, then, okay, one of my top values was courage.
Mhm.
I am here's my situation right now.
Mhm.
How do I get through this with the greatest amount of courage,
Yeah.
right? And allow that courage to sort of start to
Mhm.
be cultivated,
Mhm.
right? Or bravery or compassion or kindness or connection or wisdom or self-regulation,
Yeah.
right? And start to come from that space with awareness
Mhm.
and then we're not scattered all over the place
Yeah.
and reactive.
Right. It's responsive
Mhm.
instead of reactive
With awareness.
with awareness. Yeah. Yeah. I run into this sometimes in meetings, in work meetings where, uh, oftentimes, particularly if it's a difficult discussion, we have pretty open discussions, and I remember my values of both self regulation, which is one. Thank you for reminding me, and kindness. So how am I going to show up in this? Depending on how I'm feeling, am I irritated? Am I frustrated? Do I feel myself wanting to disconnect? Well, that's any of those to act on those is not really self-regulation. And I want to be kind, and keeping those things in mind, I can be kind and yet also not be walked all over,
Mhm.
right? Standing firm in those things. It is so helpful to be aware of those things when those things come up because it's something that I used to feel just assaulted from whatever was going to happen, right? In a situation like that, just something came at me, and then I'm just responding around my conditioning,
Yep.
not around my choices.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe that's the big difference.
Well, that is what we do
Yeah.
because we're being conditioned to deal with life in a particular way until we really start to dig in and start to reconnect with ourselves and
Mhm.
experience life from a completely different state.
Mhm.
We don't know what our choices are.
Yeah.
We just think we're supposed to do all the things in this
Mhm.
particular way,
Mhm. Yeah.
and we're not happy about it
No.
oftentimes,
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason why we're reactive.
Because we feel we have to do it, and we're not recognizing where that's another thing we say all the time, that we have choice
Mhm.
all over, everywhere, a lot of the time. Maybe not around things that might happen to us, but in how to respond.
Always.
Reactive response.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Always.
Yeah, that's powerful. You know, I do remember when we did this, how revealing that really was. So I really can't stress enough how really good it would be to even just, like you said, go on Google and
Yeah.
pick
And
20 and go.
totally. And the other thing too is that as we shift through our stages of development and different times of our life, we might reprioritize some of these values that are
Yes.
important to us too. So that's an important thing. It's not this static thing like, oh, I had this value 2 years ago. What's wrong with me now? Well, maybe there's just a shift that's happening
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
And you want to pay a little bit more attention to this
Yep.
as opposed to this other one that you just spent the last 2 years really focused on.
Right. Some of them might have moved up in priority, right? Some moved down. So
Mhm.
that was good stuff. Sure. I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point.
Absolutely. I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that was helpful for all of you out there listening to that. And certainly it is definitely worth doing, taking a look at our values. So thanks for that, Tawny.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And remember, you can sign up for Tawny's 6-week self-mastery course where you can start applying all these to yourself in your own context by going to unperfectyourself.com and you communicate with Tawny directly there. You can also communicate with us at the Breaking Up with Our BS Facebook page. You can join that group and get content in between and interact with us there. And of course, you can pick this up as a podcast wherever you get your podcast. So until next time, which is next week,
Mhm.
I am JDK Winnigan.
And I'm Tawny Santabria.
Thanks for sticking around. See you next time.
Stop it now, I mean it.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
Scusa che è già io.